What's up?
Avatar: The Last Airbender has always been one of my favorite shows, and I've wanted to make something from it for a while now. In the second season, there's an owl that has a great library, and he fills it with documents from all over the world. He's shaped like an owl, and his name is Wan Shi Tong. What better tribute to a book-loving nerd than a set of bookends? To get an idea of Wan Shi Tong's shape, I decided to make a barn owl first. I shape a cylinder into the main body, and then I use a vertex line with a skin modifier as the legs and feet. Then I bend a cube into the wing shape and mirror it. And one more cube for a tail. I squish in its bulbous head for a face, then I add eyes and a beak. There, I have an owl. Now how am I going to make this?
Why are you all looking at me?
You're the idea guy.
So I'm the only one who can ever come up with a plan? That's a lot of pressure.
And also the complaining guy.
That part I don't mind.
In order to start on Wan Shi Tong himself, we need feathers. I stretch a plane into a general feather shape. And with a curve modifier, it can easily be bent into whatever angle I need it to be. Then, an array modifier will copy it as many times as I want. I want the feathers to bend because Wan Shi Tong's feathers tend to fan out at the floor, giving him a sort of scholar in robes look. I tried using another curve modifier for the fanning of the feathers, but I didn't like the way it turned out. Instead, I decided to use an empty as a reference object for the array. An empty is basically an object without any visibility or substance, like Azula's heart.
She was right, of course, but it still hurt.
The empty's position, rotation, and scale will tell the array how to make the duplicates. Just like the practice owl, Wan Shi Tong gets a cylinder for his body. The front sections of his head get deleted so that I can extrude an outline for his face. Those vertices get rounded out. Then they're extruded inwards, leading into the eyes. And we'll fill the gap to make the nose bridge. The original idea for Wan Shi Tong bookends involved using a feather texture and sculpting it onto his body. But I've decided against doing that. Did you know that this isn't an owl's actual head shape? For most birds, we usually see the feathers clinging straight onto the body. But for owls, the feathers point away from the body, and they're basically just fluff. So the feather texture that we associate with most birds doesn't exactly work with an owl. I'll add a cube to act as a structural layer for the wings. Copy that and shrink it to act as the shoulder, wrist, elbow. Wings are weird. And now a word from our sponsor, Cactus Juice. Cactus Juice. It'll quench ya. It's the quenchiest. I'll create a second layer of feathers by duplicating the feathers, the array, and the curve, and raising them up. I decided to flip the direction of the feathers and the curve to get better control of where the feathers ended. Duplicate those three again, and adjust the curve in order to form the tail feathers. A set of 3 vertex lines with a skin modifier will be used to make the toe claws. In a real owl, there should be 4 claws, but the 4th claw would be pointing backwards and would be covered by the legs and the body anyway. And for once, I decided not to put it in there just for the sake of having it. At this point, it's important to remember that Wan Shi Tong is a spirit that's shaped like an owl, not an actual owl. Just look at his thick-ass legs that aren't pointing the right way. I played around with the idea of using more natural bird-like legs, but having the knees pointing downwards and resting on the feet, but that really didn't go with his design from the show. So I went back to the cylinder legs. I'll take a cube and make it spiky, and then realize that was a stupid idea and delete it.
You're not very bright, are you?
Instead, I'll select random points on a circle and bend them down, then extrude upwards to get myself a spiky ring. With a subdivision surface, which splits faces into smaller, more even faces, I have feather tufts that I'll put on his ankles. I didn't mirror this like I normally would, because I wanted at least some asymmetry. The same tuft gets duplicated up to sit around the top of his beak. And duplicated one more time to sit below and around his beak. As cool as Wan Shi Tong is, it would be kind of boring if he was the only thing on this bookend. I decided to give him a foxy companion, and to do that I'll deform an octagon and extrude it forward into the shape of a head. The body and neck follow that, after a quick nose job. And a big puffy tail comes out of his butt. I'll inset some spots on the head and pull them inward to get a nice brow line. A mirrored sphere will act as the eyes, which gets duplicated, cut in half, and then the halves get rotated backwards and open to give me all two perfect eyelids. For the ears, I made a cube with a small top and pushed one corner backwards. I'll loop cut in a line to reinforce the triangle shape against the subdivision surface. The legs start as cylinders that then get extruded outwards into paws. I extrude out a pair of faces for the shoulders and bridge the edge loops to connect them to the rest of the leg. I tried to repeat this process for the hind legs, but the knees don't look right.
It looks just like him to me.
Thank you, I worked really... Why do you feel the need to do that?
It's easier to make a four-legged animal standing up anyway. Reattach the front shoulders, line up the hind paws, and extrude upwards to bridge with the hips. Yes, that looks much better. Then I remembered why I had the fox sitting in the first place, to make it easier to print. So I had to rotate it back down into a sitting position, but this made it easier for me to get the sitting legs to look right.
That didn't even make sense!
The last thing for the fox was to make him face upwards at Wan Shi Tong. I made a spiral out of vertices, extruded them both up and down, and followed that with a solidify modifier in order to make a scroll. And for some extra character, I bent in some of the ends by beveling the vertices and removing the top edge. I went with a scroll because there are definitely scrolls in the Great Library, and because scrolls are more interesting to look at than books when there aren't any kind of details for the cover. I thought it would be funny and cute to have the fox sitting in a pile of scrolls, looking up at disapproving Aldad. I created duplicate after duplicate of the scroll, and placed them every which way around the circumference of the fox. I went higher, and higher, and higher, until the fox was comedically buried. To fill in the negative space, just like I did with the inside of the scroll, I adjusted a cube and set it in the center of the pile. At this point, I turned on the random color rendering, which makes each object into a different color so that they're easier to tell apart. No matter how I changed the filling, I couldn't get the pile to look right with the big block in the middle. I mean, I could leave out the filling, but I think I know how my 3D printer guy would react.
Physic, listen. Do you hear? That is the sound of ultimate suffering.
I'll just settle for a small pile of scrolls sitting between them. Let's move on to the bookend part of this bookend project. I'll stretch out a cube and give it a backboard. This bookend isn't going to be very heavy, so it needs a tongue to go under the books to hold itself in place so it can hold the books in place, and it will be removable for my convenience. There's an upper lip that will fit into the bookend proper, and the other end will be tapered down. The bookend is made to size, so I'll scale everything else down to fit it.
Look at those beautiful buttresses. What's funny?
Nothing. We just like architecture.
As do I.
I am also in love with architecture. Let's add some columns and buttresses to the back end. I'll begin with a square and a mirrored set of cylinders. The square gets a Boolean modifier to cut out the cylinders, and an array modifier to duplicate it. The wave texture at the apex of the arch is going to be a pain in my buttresses. In an effort to make this simple, I plan to use a skin modifier on a vertex line with an array modifier, that I would later Boolean out of a block, giving me a wave texture. When that didn't give me the shape I wanted, I tried again with a quarter of a circle. Boolean modifiers don't seem to like it when different parts of a mesh overlap with each other, so I separated the tube line things into different objects, and then Booleaned them back into one. Don't look at me, it works, sometimes. Then I'll Boolean that whole thing out of the block.
Really? How do you plan on doing that when you're not even wearing pants?
Okay. What if, instead of cutting the edges of the final one, maybe if I cut the edges individually?
I'm bringing you down. And this time I brought pants.
But are you prepared for your mathematics test?
Math test? Oh no! I forgot all about the math test!
Okay, fine. No tubes. I'll extrude a circle several times. Then I'll raise alternating rings in the z-axis, followed by beveling the valley vertices for a rounded shape. Line it up, Boolean that so it only exists inside the block. There. Now it works.
Your days of tyranny are over, Fire Lord!
You're gonna take me out? You're not even wearing pants.
No, Fire Lord Ozai. You're not wearing pants.
For the owl faces, I'll use a circle for the outline, and an oval for the brow/beak. Fill in the spaces with F, and the top half of the face gets pulled upwards. With another circle, I will extrude up in the z-axis, and a second time inwards. Because I already have the subdivision surface on it, this comes out rounded. After the widow's peak, I'll shift around some vertices and extrude up Z for some eyes. This owl face is looking pretty flat. In order to get it to be more of a dome shape, I'll bend it with a pair of curves. A curve is a line with no inherent polygons. I'd explain it better, but I don't actually know the details beyond curves are bendy. I'm using two curves, one to bend the sides, one to bend the top and bottom, hopefully giving me a dome shape. Why didn't I just use a lattice like I did in my last video?
I never even thought of that.
That all goes in the middle, and I'll Boolean out the cylinders. Duplicating the edge of the crowning and adding a solidify modifier gives me the trim. And last of all, a half cylinder tall for the column. Once it's in place, I'll play around with the scale, making sure it's big enough for Wan Shi Tong to walk through. The floor is a bit flat right now. I'll extrude in and up a plane, and scale some of the inner edges in a way that makes it look like a generic floor tile. One array modifier will copy the tile to the side, and another will copy it forward. For ease of printing, Wan Shi Tong, the fox, and the bookend base are all going to be separate pieces, and that means I need a way to mount them together after the fact. This conical cube will stick out of the base, and a duplicate that is slightly bigger will be booleaned out of Wan Shi Tong, creating a hole to go on the peg. An ovular cylinder will play the part of a peg for the fox and scrolls, except in this case, the fox will be the peg, and the bookend will have the hole. I also made sure that the base for the fox will include the tile flooring, by booleaning the floor to either exclude the oval cylinder, or to only exist in the cylinder. One final touch. I felt Wan Shi Tong was more generic owl than I wanted. Needs more of a brow line for his scowl. Yeah, that's better. And now it's over to Nukem Designs for the print. I still need to learn the difference between what the printer can and cannot do. The arches came out just fine, but Wan Shi Tong and the fox both got scrambled on the super fine details, and the fox didn't fit in the hole. So Nukem Designs did me a solid and printed them with his resin printer. And I think Wan Shi Tong's colors are a little better this way. I don't have any footage of the resin printing because he doesn't have a camera set up that will work for that. I adjusted the fox slightly, twice, to fit in the hole. The tongue for the bottom doesn't lock in place. Nothing a little super glue can't fix. And here's where I'd put my Avatar Legends handbooks. If I had them yet!